The main conflict within the Israeli political system is between the right and the far right and the ideological right. So the confrontation has been between the religious extremists and the political right wing on issues pertaining to the army and the religious recruitment and the recruitment of religious people to the army. This is one thing. This is one reason why the government wasn't formed, because Netanyahu couldn't muster a majority, one. But two, other than his overweening pride and ambition, Netanyahu certainly wants by any means possible to avoid being legally pursued and prosecuted. He wanted full immunity for the indictments on issues of corruption, abuse of power, and so on. And therefore he was willing to dissolve the parliament to preempt the president's right to choose somebody else, to ask him or her to form a new government. So this way he preempted the president, dissolved parliament, and called for elections which are to be held in September. The internal domestic issues and all the different contradictions within Israel in many ways, and the shift to the extreme right and to the ideological and racist positions within the political circles in Israel have led to this impasse. And I think you're going to see even more of that, because the peace camp has all but disappeared. There is no left opposition to speak of. And the Palestinian Israelis are being totally marginalized and excluded, and the Palestinians in the occupied territories are only on the receiving end of what happens. Now, when you talk about the so-called peace plans, the American timetable, in addition to the American substance dealing with the peace plan, has been formed on the basis of Israeli priorities and on the basis of Israeli domestic politics. And therefore, every time something happens in Israel, this U.S. administration sort of mobilizes either to campaign for Netanyahu or to help him put together a coalition. And at the same time, the ball has been kicked down the road on this peace plan in order to give Israel more time to create more facts, and for the U.S. also to create more facts, to prejudge the real issues of negotiations, and at the same time carry out diversionary tactics to say the issue is only an economic issue. All we need to do is give the Palestinians a handful of, or a fistful of dollars, and they will accept their captivity. We will make it more palatable or less unpleasant, so to speak. So the issue now is that this relationship between the U.S. administration and Israel has subjected international law, the will of the international community, the imperatives and requirements of peace, as well as Palestinian rights, to this partnership in crime. How do we maintain this extremist coalition in Israel? How do we serve Netanyahu's interests? What we need to do is ensure that the occupation ends and that the U.S. does not become complicit or a partner in the crime of occupation. Now, that's the real problem. You have here extreme right-wing ideologues. Trump has put together a team. As you rightfully pointed out, they are either bankruptcy lawyers or they are real estate lawyers, and his brother and his son-in-law, sorry. Nepotism is not a word here. So, and all of them are committed to Israel. They are committed ideologically to Israel. In religious terms, Israel to them is you know, the gift of God. Therefore, somebody like Friedman can speak openly and say that Israel is on the side of God. I wonder what God will do without Israel being on its side. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is the first I've heard of such a statement. Or even somebody like Pompeo, who says that God sent Trump to save Israel from Iran. I mean, is this how you make 21st century politics? Is this how you deal with geopolitical realities based on international law, on parity, on the recognition of the imperatives of peace and coexistence and so on? Or do you start invoking biblical texts and the Old Testament and so on in order to justify contemporary injustices? And then somebody like Greenblatt and others keep saying, well, this is an outdated argument. These are archaic arguments. You don't go back to your old arguments, while they're going back and reciting the Bible to us a 3,000-year-old text as being the basis of 21st century decisions, and yet we are not supposed to talk about freedom, human rights, dignity. These are really calcified arguments. So there is a certain degree of blind commitment emanating from a very strong ideological fundamentalist faith that has dominated decision-making. And that's why we feel that this is extremely dangerous. Whenever you bring God into a conflict, you turn it into a religious conflict, it becomes a matter of absolutism, absolute right versus absolute wrong, and therefore you can justify whatever you do to the other because you negate the very humanity and all the rights of the other.